Welcome to everyone who is joining us. We're just going to take a couple of minutes to let folks come into the room, get themselves settled, and then we'll begin. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. We're delighted you're here. All right, I'll get started with a little bit of housekeeping. Welcome to all of our attendees, and thank you for joining us for this webinar that is presented by Folk Alliance International. A few things we would like to cover before we begin today's proceedings. We like to begin with a digital land acknowledgement as we recognize the complexity and privilege of gathering online. This land acknowledgement, digital land acknowledgement, was written by Adrian Wong of the Spiderweb Show in Ontario and has been adapted for this webinar. Since our activities are shared digitally to the internet, we invite everyone to take a moment to acknowledge the legacy of colonization embedded within the technologies, structures, and ways of thinking that we use every day. We are using equipment and high-speed internet not readily available in many Indigenous and marginalized communities. And so we invite everyone to join in acknowledging our shared responsibility to make good of this time, and for each of us to consider our roles in reconciliation, decolonization, and accomplishment. So if you'd like to tell us a little bit more about the traditional stewards of the land that you are joining us from, I've just dropped a little thing in the chat box there. You can use nativeland.ca to find out more about the original inhabitants of where you are joining us from today, and we would love to hear that from you. If you'd like to submit questions today for consideration for our live Q&A section at the end of today's webinar, I would encourage you to use the live Q&A or the Q&A box at the bottom in your control panel and save the chat box for compliments and comments. That way we can make sure that we're lining up your questions in order and aggregating questions that are similar, so we have the most chance of answering everyone's queries. A recording and transcript of this webinar will be posted online in the coming days, and a link to that recording will be sent out to all registrants of this webinar by the end of the week. We are not offering closed captioning today, unfortunately, due to, I'm going to own it, my personal administrative error in booking the captioner, but we will have a transcript available after today, and my sincere apologies. When you close the webinar, finally, a short survey would appear, and we would appreciate any and all feedback, great and not so great, because it helps us to provide programming that is relevant and engaging for you, dear listener and world. Finally, Folk Alliance International offers these webinars free of charge, not only to our members, but to the community and industry at large, and frankly, to everyone on planet Earth. So we appreciate any support you can offer to help offset our programming costs so that we can continue to do so. And you can make a tax-deductible donation on our website, folk.org/donate. Don't worry, I'll remind you about that again. Delighted that many of the folks who are joining us today work for organizations that are recipients of the International Folk Music Awards Clearwater Award, which is presented to a festival that prioritizes environmental stewardship and demonstrates public leadership in sustainable event production. Past winners on the call today, the Clearwater Festival. They are the, oh, what's the word for it? Well, it's named after them. Hillside Festival and Pickathon. I'm guessing probably Woodford's on the short list coming up. Could be wrong, probably right. Okay, let's get started. We're gonna have a little poll to find out who's here today. So please let us know by answering this snazzy poll, what is your industry role? Who is with us today? This will help us to orient the conversation towards those who are here. And we'll just give that one more minute, and then we will see those results. Jared will post them. Jared, have you posted them and I just can't see them?
Not yet. It's just coming in kind of slowly.
Okie dokie.
And it looks like
early.
It looks like there may be 2 questions in this poll.
Oh,
Tressa, Zoom is maybe doing it a little different today. So the second question is up there as well.
Okay, well, then we shall look at both answers, shan't we? We will pivot as we have become accustomed to doing in this wild time on the planet. Okay, we've got lots of festivals and PACs, but artists coming in strong. Thank you, artists, for joining us today. This conversation is for you, no matter who you are. What obstacles have you encountered in trying to make your events more sustainable? Confusion, need more clarity on what to do is our number one answer. Okay, you're in the right place. Let me reassure you. And you're with our wonderful panelists who I will let our moderator introduce. But I get to introduce our moderator, and I'm delighted to do so. Juno-nominated producer, singer-songwriter, and all-around magical human being who sheds joy and light and philosophical thought on all of those that she encounters. It's my great delight to introduce to you my pal and awesome moderator, Alicia Barilla.
Thank you, Tressa. Thank you so much for having me. And it's so nice to meet all of our amazing panelists and to see that there's lots of people joining us today. Like you said, artists, festivals, arts organizations. So this is my first moderation gig. I've had lots of musical gigs, but it's my first moderation one. I'm really, really stoked to be here. So let's see, we've introduced me. Awesome. We have an agenda slide that we're going to go over so everyone kind of knows what we're going to be talking about today with the panelists. And what we're going to be talking about are the panelists' accomplishments to date, pivot and possibility, increased awareness in a time of pause, pandemic-inspired programs and projects, actionable changes for organizations, and there's going to be a live Q&A for which I believe the questions have been submitted or can still be submitted, Tressa?
Yes, they are currently being submitted in the Q&A box on the control panel.
Awesome sauce. Really, really great. So first topic is accomplishments to date. And so this is a question for all of the panelists. We're going to each take 2 to 3 minutes to share your organization's pre-pandemic accomplishments. So what are some things you did before the pandemic to create your sustainable event or increase sustainability in our industry? I'm really excited to hear from all of you. And our first speaker I'm going to introduce to answer this is Amali. So Amali, I'm going to introduce, there's a beautiful slide as well. Amali Knobloch is the sale logistics coordinator at the Hudson River Slope Clearwater and has worked as an educator, facilitating both day and multi-day environmental education programs at various organizations. Amali prioritizes engaging the community on the intersection of representation, equity, and inclusion in all of her endeavors. She serves on the board of the National Women's Sailing Association and the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee for Tall Ships America. Really stoked to hear. So should, Tressa, I introduce everyone and then they answer, or should people answer after I introduce them?
I think they can answer after you introduce them.
Awesome, that makes so much sense. Amali, I'm really excited to hear. Take it away.
So the Clearwater Festival, the Great Hudson River Revival, is one of, if not the oldest folk festival in the country. And so we have been able to accomplish a lot, I think, in the 51 years that we've been doing this. One of the things I think of that comes to mind for me specifically is connecting the thread of folk music that I think that young people and young people of color specifically don't necessarily identify with. And making sure that there are voices within the festival for us to be able to be attracted to it, for us to be able to be welcomed into the community. One of the really, really great things about the Clearwater Festival is that we always have an environmental action area where people can get involved in issues that affect their community. Our festival is held in the Hudson Valley every year, and so you can come and learn about the issues that we're fighting against specifically. And we always have an education area, which means that you can learn about the issues that are affecting your community. Again, very specifically, and how you can take action, how you can make changes. What are things that you may not have known that are positive often about the river and the estuary and the ecology of the area that will make you come back and get involved. And we always make sure that we have set up 2 areas, which are areas that help people transition off of harmful products and understanding the links between what they are consuming and their contribution to the area. So that means learning about where your food is coming from and why it's important to know that, why it's important to make sure that you are eating sustainably, which means locally, and making sure that you are not polluting more into our river than we need to be. If any of you know anything about New York, it has this combined sewage outflow problem, which means that sometimes the things that we flush or put down the drain end up in the river. It's raining today, so that is actively on my mind right now. And so we really use this event not just for people to come and enjoy really wonderful music, predominantly folk, but also as a way for them to find out, as a town hall, what's going on in their community and how best to combat those things or amplify the positive things that are happening.
Yeah, I love that so much. That makes so much sense that a music event would hold that information, because people really retain information when they have something exciting happening around it. So thank you, Amali, so much for sharing that. Let's see, next up we have Candace. Candace is here, awesome, in Toronto, love it. Candace has been planning events for over 12 years, and her passion for the events industry is evident. She believes that we should all strive to leave this world a little better than you found it. The sentiment is the driving force behind all that she does as the co-founder of the Sustainable Events Forum. Candace champions sustainability because the future of her 2 little boys and her extended family depend on the actions we take today. While she has executed many events competently and in an environmentally friendly way, and is an active volunteer in her industry, Candace has a real superpower working with suppliers. Her sense of fairness, openness to new ideas, and collegial attitude make her one of those planners that suppliers just love to go the extra mile for. In addition to the Sustainable Events Forum, Candace is Chief Event Strategist at her company, 360 Events Inc., and she's on a mission to plan and execute events which are a force for good in our environment and communities. Thank you, Candace, for being here. We'd love to hear what you've been up to.
Thank you, Alicia. So I've just been told my video is not that great right now. Can you see me?
I think it looks great. I don't know.
All right, well, I guess onward. So thank you so much. And yeah, so with TSEF, I co-founded that event. We actually just celebrated our 1-year anniversary with my partner in climate, as I like to call her, Natalie Lowe, who I'm hoping was able to join today. Natalie, if you're in the chat, say hi. And really, when we decided together as 2 event professionals in the corporate event planning world to start the Sustainable Events Forum last year, it really stemmed from our knowledge of the fact that there is so much, as you guys voted for in the poll, there's so much confusion and misinformation around sustainability. And we were talking with fellow event professionals, and we realized that that level of education was lacking in our industry. And so while after a year we are still learning and we're surprised at that level of misinformation, we decided to start doing events specifically for people in the corporate environment, event professionals. And we founded TSEF based on 4 pillars: education, inspiration, collaboration, and action. And since being founded, we had our first signature event last year where we dived into topics like changing our behavioral mindset. What are the obstacles that we come across when we think of sustainability? What are the obstacles we're hearing from stakeholders and clients even, and how do we help to change that behavior and mindset around that? Because education, you've got to know to understand, and a lot of that education, it's overwhelming. Climate or eco-anxiety and climate fatigue, we've all heard those terms. So how do we pick out what's relevant, actionable? And so through that education of our first event we did last year, we got really great feedback from our attendees, and we did really engaging things, engaged with roundtable discussions. We talked about solutions. We talked about those actionable steps we can all take. And we were inspired by a lot of the speakers that we had at that event to collaborate with them, to learn from them. So many great festivals being represented here, panel that we can all learn from. So the collaboration piece of that was important for us too, not just collaborating with our fellow event professionals, but with suppliers as well in the industry, and really partnering with each other, sharing knowledge. And so since that first event last November, we've also hosted in collaboration with a lot of industry associations, such as the Canadian Society for Professional Event Planners, MPI, Meeting Professionals International. We held some great events around Earth Day with them. We did an event called Earth Day for Event People, which was really well received. And what Natalie and I have found is that the format that works well are panels such as this and roundtables. And that's where you get some of those great nuggets of information and those aha moments. And we really actually hold each other accountable in those roundtables to say, this is going to be my action plan. We're going to share it with everyone and each other. And let's check in with each other. Let's just not write this great plan and shelve it or put it in your office drawer, but let's keep talking about it. How can we keep improving? And so through doing all these events throughout the last year with different associations, we've grown quite a network of collaborators and partners in doing this, and people like FAI, and learning what others in the different sectors of the event industry are doing is really key. I plan mostly corporate events, but that's not to say that the festival folks can teach us a few things, and we can learn from each other and tailor how we do our events in a more sustainable way. And of course, the last pillar for this is action. Let us actually remember that one small step is going to make a difference. I know that everyone thinks, well, I'm just one person, what can I do? But it takes a lot of us, millions of us planners doing these things and moving the needle on sustainability. So, it's taking that action, holding each other accountable. And we've gotten some great feedback from our industry in terms of our fellow corporate planners that they appreciate us vetting the information too for them. When we bring people on as guests on panels or on our podcast, we also got a podcast that started as well called Planners for the Planet. And we're showcasing different sectors of sustainability. So one of the events we did was we did a screening up at a film called Guardians of the Grasslands. And that film talked about beef and the fact that it gets such a bad rap in our industry. Everyone's saying go vegan and plant-based, but let's understand as well why we're saying that. So we talked about regenerative agricultural practices at that event. And we also partner with Sustainable Events Alliance. Natalie hosted 2 panels at their hackathon back in April. So really talking to all these different people in our industry, because we sometimes operate in silos and we're not talking to each other. And through that, we have seen a lot of the movement towards moving our industry to greener pastures.
I love that. Very true, the silo thing, and definitely collaborating is key. Thank you so much. Our next speaker is McBride, and McBride, as you can see, their awesome bio. I am apparently going to just read a few things off the bio now. So McBride works with Woodford Folk Festival. I performed at Woodford Folk Festival, probably one of the coolest festivals I've ever been to in my entire life, which is really awesome. And I'm really excited to hear from you, McBride. Go ahead, tell us what you have been up to. Drum roll.
Right, unmute. Okay, here we go. I started at Hillside at 17 and learned about music and in the environment and all the social issues there. and then happened to be a backpacker in Australia, found Woodford. It's Hillside on steroids, and just fell in love with it. And so have been there for the last 17 years working with the Woodford Folk Festival and Woodfordia Inc., which is a not-for-profit organization. And we do, not only do we do the Woodford Folk Festival, we do the Planting Festival, which is an environmentally based festival. It's a plant, seed, grow ideas kind of environment where people have talks and workshops and go out and do working bees. And at Woodford, people sponsor a tree, and then at the Planting Festival, they will go out and plant those trees that they sponsored at the big festival. In all of our festivals, we do have a really strong environmental program with regard to our waste management, doing the 4 streams, a small amount of landfill, recycling, composting. We have our own compost lounge, which is where we process a large amount of the waste on site. And then because we're a charity, we've also been able to become sponsors for the Container for Change program, which is here in Queensland. So people will leave their cans and bottles, and then we can collect them and return them for a little bit of money that goes back into the organization. We've also closed our water loop by developing or creating a filtration plant. We have dams on site. We have 500 acres of property, which is an hour northwest of Brisbane. And with the filtration plant, and then in the last, about 10 years ago, we built a wastewater treatment plant. So we actually treat our own sewerage on site and use that to irrigate the land. So it's a closed loop, which has saved about 10% of our carbon footprint by simply doing that. We have a Forest Woodfordia program that specializes in different plantings on site, looking at butterflies and trying to bring back endangered species, planting sedges and trying to control weeds and do weed management on our site. We've had the land for about 26 years, and in that time, with the help of volunteers, have planted over 110,000 trees and plants. Moving on to specialist planting, which all of these plantings are maintained by a group called the Tree Huggers, and they're a dedicated group of volunteers that come once a month out to the land. They haven't been able to during the pandemic, but they have just restarted because our numbers are so low. They come and do the monthly care of the trees. I mentioned the Planting Festival with the environmental program, but we also during Woodford have the Greenhouse program, which is Australia's largest environmental program. 6 days, 8 hours a day of talks and panels with expert scientists talking about all of the projects they're working on, the new innovations that are happening in the world, and how we can tackle the issues of climate change and what's going on. We've also got a Cycle to Woodford and One Less Car program. So we're encouraging more people to carpool, take the bus and public transport to the festival. And there's quite a number of avid cyclists. So they get a special camping area and they're the first people to be let into the festival site. So that kind of encourages people. And there's a luggage program. So we bring their luggage for them and they don't have to worry about that. We have compostable crockery on site. That's but a policy for all the stall holders. And then more recently, we've developed a reusable cup program. So we got rid of the single-use plastic cups on site. So a fair number of things going on environmentally and then a lot of the program is also really based with a lot of Indigenous content as well as environmental content through the Children's Festival all the way through the entire program. So we are always thinking, we have a 500-year plan, and one of our things is that we aim to gift the future generations with a clean slate. Our organization doesn't want to leave the successive generations with unencumbered debt, like social or environmental or financial debt. So we always think about when we're building something that it's going to be something that's going to be there for 500 years. And that means that we don't just rashly build something permanent and then have to tear it down in 10 years time. So we're very thoughtful in what we build permanently. So, yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, McBride. Wow. Amali and Candace and McBride. Already my heart's like, woo, getting really friggin' excited for when we're all gonna play music together again. Next up, we have Marie, and Marie Zimmerman's the executive director of Hillside Festival, which I've also played at, which is sweet. And she oversees outreach, finance, operations, risk management, HR, and teaches songwriting. Marie, thank you for being here.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. Oh gosh, our vision and mission dovetail really nicely with Woodford and Clearwater for sure. And but one of our most significant accomplishments to date is that we became carbon neutral in 2019. And that was after 5 years of recording observation data, box office data, and technical data. So that we could establish a baseline. And from there, once you have a baseline, you can introduce green initiatives and then measure the effect on that. So our green initiatives that we've been implementing over 30 plus years are things like dishwashing on site for everything, shuttle buses, bike brigades, solar power. We have a mandatory mug program, and that is that you can't get a beer or anything really unless you purchase a mug, a stainless steel mug. Waste management, four-stream system, tree planting, trailblazing. We also dig compost holes right on site. We also offer environmental workshops on things like how to build a solar oven. We talk about the politics and pleasures of food and have several workshops on that. We offer odd things like, you know, how to die in a green way, how to make a green funeral, things like that. So for the measurement data though, the observation data was from measuring our energy, water usage, number of cars, bikes, our gate, so how many people actually came in, even watching the weather so that we could watch water usage. And then the box office data, we looked at how many local audience members versus how many came within driving distance, how many came outside driving distance. And then the technical documentation involved measuring lighting and sound equipment, and that would allow us to sort of estimate the connected load and the power draw on all of the stages, because we have 5 stages in several areas of the festival. So those are some of the things that we are recently proud of.
So awesome. I love it. I can admit to both Hillside and Woodford that they're super, super ahead of the game. Hopefully one day I get to Clearwater. Amali, that'd be dope. I would love to go there. And we have one more person to introduce, which I'm really excited about. So far, everyone's just like very, very impressive and awesome. And Zale loves applying the creative and engineering process to life pursuits and making big ideas become reality, leads using a mix of inspiration, innovation, and communication and design skills with a strong results-oriented focus. Zale, thank you for being here.
Thank you. I actually know almost Hillsdale is a real big influence on Pickathon because some of the early programs we got were from some of the initiatives of the dishwashing and so on. And so if you guys know anything about, we're located in an 80-acre farm that's kind of a really classic Northwest farm, you know, large trees, hills, pastures. It's just gorgeous, and outside of Portland, Oregon here. And Portland is somewhat insane for its kind of design build, just out of the box thinking. Like, so everything, ideas almost start off at the very corner of like, no way, you can't do that. And we always challenge ourselves, well, can we do it? And so a lot of things that we've done over the years and the sustainability front are kind of wrapped in a larger idea that we always are thinking we've limited our size. So we knew really early on that we weren't going to be a giant festival, but we wanted to kind of subvert pop culture somehow. So we also are we're one of the largest content festivals out there of any size, like even bigger than like Coachella. But we're tiny. So we have this kind of mirage on the world that we play like a large festival on TV, we like to say, but we're just like at, 50th of some of those. And we have the land to do many, many more people. So like we knew kind of really early on that there's just no way and it's in both sustainability and experience that we just need to be kind of happy with kind of finding that spot that we can actually be sustainable, which is very much attached to the experience. Like that experience, you can't separate the two. And then we got down many rabbit holes in the idea of renewable energy. And the one we're somewhat known for too is we just said, hey, can we get rid of single-use items? It's just like flat out get rid of them. And how would you do that? And so we, back in 2010, came up with the reusable, like threw it out to our audience, and they said, heck yeah, let's, if I had a choice, I'd love to not throw away, 500,000 plastic cups. And so we started the kind of stainless steel cups way back when. And then the next year we decided, well, we're just going to after Hillsdale, we kind of said, well, we could do the dishwashing too. So we worked with a lot of dishwashing companies and built some very high efficiency dishwashing with very low water, built our own filtration system, our own bioswells, our ability to not like take the chemicals from the porta-johns. We're just like really conscious of like how much byproducts we're creating. But we kind of did it with the audience. So that was like the thing we always said. We say, how do you make these things so that the audience is invested too? So they're kind of souvenirs. These are kind of subsidized items that people love, like the cups and the plates are basically branded with that year festival. And everybody either has to bring one from the years past, like so that's okay, or you have to like be able to invest it in, and almost everybody really ends up. So it pays for itself too, which is really awesome. We've been trying to give it away to the larger festival community in the United States. We're like, look, this would actually, you may be able to even make a little money, or you could save money. This sustainability is actually, and people love it. And it's actually really creates a lot of awareness that you could actually take advantage of here. So we've done a little bit of consulting, but everyone's scared in the United States of oh my goodness, I don't want to force anyone to do anything. And we're like, that's ridiculous. Like if you just ask them, they would do it, because it's like these ideas that we're all kind of, I think, more familiar with in this forum are kind of just obvious when you start doing them. We also do a lot of native plant restoration. There's a whole ecosystem that's kind of really interesting history of the land there. So what else? Yeah, I mean, we have a biking program. I love that idea, Karen. We have the exact same thing. We encourage everybody. For a small festival, 20% of the people that come on bikes, and we pick up their luggage in multiple locations all over Portland, and we take it back, and we have free transportation from the city, all tied in. We're really close to Portland, so we actually have an advantage. Like 4 miles away is the light rail, but when you come to the festival, you'd be blown away. You'd be like, oh my goodness, this is the middle of nowhere. But we're not. We're literally at the edge of. So we can tie into all of the big fly into Portland, don't get a car, don't do anything, just come into Portland and travel. And we've made it really easy to kind of tie into the trains, the planes, the bikes. And yeah, and I love the idea that all of the efforts we're doing kind of can subvert pop culture. So we've been really successful with that idea of content, and kind of recently it's allowed us during the pandemic to kind of like, we raised a ton of money for music cares here, and with the Grammys we did this. We played like on TV, we played like Netflix, and we released a concert for 4 months. We have like 800 recorded concerts, and we basically did that with the Grammys, and we raised as much money as the Grateful Dead with and it was just hilarious. Like, but it's like the community spirit of the sustainability kind of put into the culture of our musicians too. Like, so sustainability for us is a really big deal for the community. And how does the community stay sustainable? And how do you kind of build in the idea that these people still need to live, And we've started a new kind of live streaming company that we haven't really talked about yet. It's called Frequency, that we're kind of built for the
Hold that thought, Zale, because you are getting to our next question.
I will just leave one last thought. The big insight we had this year, which I think is just so obvious, I never thought of before, is we're kind of tearing down all of our big infrastructure. We built the largest tension fabric structure in the world, a temporary one, just because it was this cool design thing. And now we're thinking of, wow, everyone, as much as we did that, we have this stage in the woods called the Wood Stage. It's built out of sticks, and it's always been the favorite. So we've redesigned the entire festival layout based on nature, land, time of day, and it's been radical. But that's been the biggest insight I've had. So I love to talk more with all of you. So it's been fascinating.
That's awesome. And that is so Portland for people to bike. I love it so much. Big Portlandia fan here. That's about as much as I know about there. I haven't been there yet, but sounds awesome. So thank you so much, Zale, and thank you to all of our speakers. Our next topic is pause, pivot, and possibility. So just as Zale started to touch on, this one specifically for Candace and Marie, what possibilities for industry-wide change or shift towards greener practices have been made more evident during the pandemic shutdowns, the pivots, and the pauses?
Thanks, Alicia. So Marie, I guess I could jump in and kick it off. For me, I feel like one of the biggest takeaways coming out of the pandemic that as a global community, we all feel is that sense of community and camaraderie, that we were all able to, this pandemic broke down a lot of barriers, and it really pushed us towards collaboratively working together. We worked with different countries and regions to address this virus. And so in addressing the climate emergency, I feel like that approach of that global sense of community is something we should carry forward as we try to tackle and deal with the climate emergency that we're in right now, and using our events to create those centers of influence, and using events as influence to bring different players to the table and really share that information and work towards that bigger effective goal and finding solutions. To me, that's one of the biggest things coming out of this, out of the pandemic. What do you think, Marie?
Yeah, I agree. I think festivals have strong communities. I think all of us have been addressing that. And there's also an historic association with environmental utopianism, the attraction of getting back to the garden, to steal Joni Mitchell's phrase. But I wonder, there's also the possibility that we can piggyback on the "we are all in this together," the sort of sentiment that emerged from the pandemic, and encourage our audiences to become ambassadors, like not leave behind our community, create that community.
Yeah, and as Zale just said, take them along with you and tell them what you're doing. Communicating, I think, is also key to that as well, because they want to know, because they can then translate that to their own events or share that news with others, be it in your home, personal life, or in running your business, or taking it back to your company to implement more green initiatives. And so that kind of comes into the second thing that came to mind was green leadership. So, we've got all these great ideas, but it really means us stepping up to the plate and questioning the status quo and pushing back and saying, no, this is using our voice and pushing back and saying, this is not how we want to do it going into the new normal. Let's change that, because that didn't work for us before. So as a corporate planner, I appeal to other planners that we should really use our voice and be more leaders, not followers, putting things on your request for proposals, not being shy and asking your suppliers for certain things that they may not have been doing, or that they were hesitant about doing because no one else was asking. And we actually on our website have a great free downloadable resource, a list of sustainable RFP questions that you can include with your proposals going out. And we'll be happy to share that with you as well. And really, the analogy I thought of here, given the audience, was the fact that we should all really view our tools in terms of sustainability as a playlist, a musical playlist on on Spotify. And when your music taste changes, your playlist changes. So to bring it back to sustainability, as you gain more knowledge and educate yourself, that playlist of what you can and can't do will change, and be realistic about what you can implement, and share your playlist. Look at others, what they're doing, look at their toolkits, learn from other festivals like all the great ones mentioned here today, and implement what you think realistically can work for your events. And again, it goes back to that collaborative piece.
I love that.
Yeah,
That's,
leadership too. You know, the model that festivals uses is not a sort of capitalist, individualist leadership model. It's a collaborative model, and so that's what we should be doing. But there is this thing about stepping up that I hear in everything that Zale was just talking about, McBride was, and Amali, and that is that sometimes you just have to say, well, why do we have to do it that way? And why can't we do it this way? And then just keep going with it. You know, like, do you really need bottled water on site? Why do you need that? And artists, why do you put that in your riders that you want bottled water? Can't you just bring a cup, or we'll give you a cup, and we've got a big water tanker on site, so we'll do that. So the artists can also take part in this, in that they can have somebody on their crew who's managing the logistics of their tours, for instance, and so that they're ditching disposables backstage and on their buses, that they're greening over their hospitality riders. They use biodiesel maybe in their buses. They compost, or they're sourcing catering food from local farms. We encourage fans to carpool, to bike to the festival, and so on. But all of these things happen only because people are saying, well, why not?
Yeah.
And so you always have to remember, say why not, and then don't forget to collaborate with a million other people who are going to say, yeah, why do we do it that way?
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Marie and Candace.
Yeah.
So sorry, we have to move on to the next. This is the weird panelist job I have. I've never done that, but here we are. But by the way, everything you're saying is inspiring the crap out of me and just making me want to go back to a festival so badly. So thank you for all that you're doing. This is for Amali, Zale, and McBride to answer in about 2 to 3 minutes each. Here's a question. Tell us about a project or program that's begun to take shape as a result of pandemic happening. And I know, Zale, you started talking about it. So for Amali and McBride, and then maybe come back to Zale.
Yeah, so one of the things we were really, really excited about this year was making the most of what we had. Obviously, the pandemic threw a wrench in all of our plans, personally and professionally. And Clearwater is an organization that has typically trended their demographic to be older, simply because we've been around for so long, and many of our supporters are in that age bracket. But this year, because we were forced to go digital, we actually launched a awareness campaign on social media called Our River Connects Us. Again, reaching out to all of the people in the Hudson River estuary area for their stories and their insight on their past in the community and what they wanted to look like for the future. And so we asked them questions about the environment, the river, what they wanted to the banks of the river to look like in 100 years, and ended up coming out with a series of interviews and lots of footage from our vessel, the Hudson River Sloop Clearwater, that was launched on social media and really had an amazing response, reaching almost 500,000 people in the 30-day period that we tracked some of the posts. And again, speaking to my earlier point of widening our audience and drawing in that younger crowd in our area. I feel like a lot of the places that we're talking about, young people are the untapped potential, and one of the wonderful things about young people is that they are ready to move forward. They are ready to bring on all of these initiatives. And so many of the things that the other panelists have been saying today are the ideas that I've written down of like what I want our festival to look like in the future. So I'm really excited to be able to reference and point to very specific events that are accomplished and have succeeded in implementing these new initiatives.
I love that. Thank you so much, Amali. And McBride?
Well, Woodfordia, when we had to cancel the planting festival, we still had a commitment to promoting folk into the community, and so we also switched to online concerts of all the artists that were booked to play at the planting festival. So that was one thing we did, and then because the planting festival has such a strong environmental focus with talks and with scientists, our environmental projects officer, Dr. Sandra Tushinska, did online science talks called the Discovery Lab on YouTube, and hosted these conversations with the various different scientists talking about fungi or butterflies or bees or what have you. And then last year, Woodfordia built Australia's largest natural wetland and recreational swimming facility. It's called Lake Gula. Gula is koala, which is Uncle Noel, who's our spokesperson for the traditional owners of the land, the Jinnabara people. That's his nickname when he was a kid. And if you see him, he looks like a little koala. So we built this giant lake. It's an acre surface area. At the deepest point, it's 5.5 meters, and it's naturally filtered. We had volunteers come out and plant about 6,500 plants around the edges, and within a year, it's well established, and it handled, after even 3 months, it handled 21,000 people going through and swimming through this lake, and it's gorgeous. So we've got this land, 500 acres, and we've always talked about how we need to develop it further so that we can sustain ourselves as an arts organization. We can't rely on a 6-day festival to sustain us through the year. So we had, I guess the pause gave us this opportunity to develop something called Bush Time, and it's like an inspired camping experience. So a very small number of people compared to the usual 25,000 on site. We have about 1,000 people. And we did a trial in September, our spring Bush Time, and it had a strong environmental program. Even though we weren't allowed to do a lot of music and dance workshops, we did have, well, we had learned how to play ukulele, or there was also a village called for the youth. As you say, the young people are the future, and we got them involved in learning how to use power tools and build a village out of pallets, found items, and that was beautiful to see them create their own little, they called it Coronaville, which was quite funny. But so this new business opportunity, which still has a strong environmental focus on using the land that we have, and we're continuing this, and this is going to be a new model for us. Hopefully we'll still be able to continue it on once we go back to doing large scale festivals, but Bush Time is what we're working on, and we're introducing a bike culture on site. During Woodford, there's usually a shuttle bus because the site is so large, but this one, we're not going to do the shuttle bus. We're telling people to bring their bikes so that they can get around on bikes, which is also great. And then we've also had time to look at things like reevaluating our environmental initiatives and making sure that they're as good as they can be. We have the reusable cup program, but we have to rent some 295,000 cups. And we did try and wash as many as we could on site with our own water and locally, but there were still 250,000 cups that needed to be shipped off site to be washed. And so in this time, we've been able to look at opportunities to perhaps buy our own cups and then partner with the local council and then rent those cups out to smaller events so that they can get away from single-use plastic. So that's something that we're looking at, as well as exploring different compostable crockery and biodegradable things that aren't as biodegradable as they say, because there is in this world a lot of greenwashing around those kind of products. And so we've come to realize that some of the coffee cups that we have been using aren't degrading as quickly as we'd like, and our compost lounge is not up to the standard that we'd like to be able to use it for the planting. So that's been another thing that's been great for us to be able to really have the time to investigate and find the best products for our events into the future. So yeah, just continuing to still spread the word and do an environmental program and citizen science talks at Bush Time. And also partnering with Dirt Girl, which is on ABC, our national broadcasting corporation. And Dirt Girl and Scrap Boy are very famous in Australia, and they came and did daily workshops with the young ones, the 3 to 8-year-olds, and just really getting them engaged in loving the environment and taking care of it. So we're starting them young and getting them really aware of what they can do to
I love it.
improve the sustainability. So yeah, it is beautiful to watch them, the 3-year-olds going, I love the sun.
Yes. Thank you,
Yes.
McBride. I'm hearing from everyone I believe the children are our future.
Yes.
Teach them well and let them lead the way. That song needs to come back. Someone needs to redo it, and because that
You
is such
should
a big
do it.
message. Maybe I used to sing it all the time when I was a teenager. So we're moving on. Thank you so much for these beautiful, beautiful ideas. I am literally just like springing out of my seat. Can't wait to get back to festivals. Next question is, Zale, sorry, where did Zale go? Zale, do you have a 2-minute anecdote about something you are doing right now?
Sure. I mentioned a little bit, but we kind of really screeched to a halt. We're still screeched to a halt here in United States, big time. There's just nothing in the whole West Coast is shut down. So we had just crisis with community and staff and artists, and we just really kind of went into that mode. We're like, how do we help? How do we take all this energy and kind of pour it into the community? That did include the farm too. So we really we got involved with the state and tried to work with a lot of independent venues and try to find ways that this community can kind of survive through either direct actions that we are taking with the state, but we also raised a lot of money through some content we had, and that was great. We worked with a lot of different our musicians that throughout the year were really kind of into the idea that, you know, the type of music that we all love, we have a very wide diversity of music. So we put hardcore, like, you know, rock next to bluegrass, next to, you know, Quebecois, you know, from Montreal. Like, we just really think all that music is super vibrant and just wanted to push that out. So we did months of that. And now we're really focused on, while we're still trying to figure out how to just keep our community in kind of a stasis, is there's still none of the live stream stuff that we are doing felt like the vibe that we love to do. So we took our design build kind of mindset and we said, this stinks. Like, there's no connection here. This is not what performance should be. And live stream is just not cutting it. Like, we have a really high end kind of editing production team, but it's just not, there's no connection. So we've been really kind of from the ground up building something that I'm really excited about. I think everybody here would probably really like it. We had not quite ready to launch yet, but it's going to be the end of the year. We may partner with some big people, but that is basically around, like, how do you have a live experience that is actually feels vital, and you have to be there, and it's not something you can watch later on your TV and it's a video on demand kind of experience. It's a great question, and we had ended up having to build it. So that's what we're in the middle of right now, and we kind of see it as kind of a mission to help the independent communities, the independent venues, which is just under terrible pressure here in the United States. And there's a lot of predatory people out there going to go buy half of their venues. And we are avid, no, like, we can survive. Let's figure it out together. And so we're building a really large coalition here in the United States around this. And that's been really exciting. So, like, how do we do something just as vital during pandemic?
Love it. Very, very beautiful and important and so powerful. Thank you all for sharing those. So I think this might be our last little question, and then we're going to go to the Q&A. So for this last one, actionable changes. What are 2 concrete actionable steps, one easy and one more long-term, that organizations and individuals can take to shift to green in their practices? And we will start with Amali. Thank you so much, and excited to hear from you.
Yeah, I think that, you know, short term, that we want to be like some of these other festivals that we're talking about, like Woodford and Hillside, and be as close to zero waste as we can as the facilitators, and then getting as close to zero waste for the people who want to participate as they can be. It seems, it's very easy to say, someone mentioned it earlier, it's just like, we actually do want to do this. Why can't we just be better? And so I'm really looking forward to that for us specifically. And then long term, someone mentioned earlier the artist writers. Like I think the music industry has to, take some responsibility and make sure that they contribute in a way that is not just with their dollars. We can't just write off actions in our personal lives through philanthropy, but actually setting an example and showing the way that we can move forward together and stop harming our environment.
Thank you. I love that. I do ask for tap water on my rider, just so everyone knows. Like, just give me a clean cup and clean water and I'm good. And so that's awesome. And Candace?
There we go. Yeah, and I mean, to keep it really simple, I feel like the immediate action from a corporate planner or an event producer's standpoint is your relationship with your suppliers. You already engage with your suppliers, their partners, make them collaborators, and don't be shy about communicating your sustainability goals for your events with them. Bring them on board with you. It's a journey, and continue to educate each other, because we can learn a lot from the venues, convention centers that we're working with. And a lot of the times I see this with event planners, they're just unaware of what the venues have to offer. And so they never think to ask for it. So it's really opening those doors of communication and having those candid conversations and bringing them on board from the beginning of the planning process. Throughout this pandemic, as planners, we're not busy executing right now. Let's face it, everything is shut down everywhere. So use your time wisely to plan, use it to do your research, do your outreach, see who's doing what in your cities. Each region is different, of course, but not being shy about just coming to the table with what you expect them to bring. And then more long-term, I think from an attendee perspective, and again, going back to what Zale mentioned, bring them along with you in the journey. They need to be your advocates. They then become your collaborators too. So don't just want to educate them at your event with that content you have, but you need to work with them to raise the bar and help them to continue their sustainable behavior at their own events or in their personal life, and create that legacy of your event long after your event is done.
Thank you so much. That is really, really brilliant. Marie?
Yeah, so an easy short-term goal would be just to refuse single-use anything and to compost and recycle. Try to have compost really close to your site, if not on site. That would be terrific, because then everybody sees, oh my gosh, look at all of the banana peels and so on going somewhere. Yeah, but avoiding single-use anything, like, do you really need straws? Can you maybe, if you have a vendor who's selling smoothies, can you do rice straws instead? Do people have to have their ice cream in a cup? And if they do, could it be an edible cup? Or can they just have it in a cone? And so you could be like the cone police. Lots of things can be made that are edible, but also at your festival, can you serve a lot of handheld food so that then people are just taking a napkin with them? They're not required to take extra things. Of course, dishwashing is a bigger deal and involves a lot more time. Long-term goal is to measure everything. You need to be able to set targets, but you actually have to know where you're at right now. Like, how much CO2 are you actually producing, and how much are you saving? And then from there, you can bring more people on board, just saying, hey, if we adopt this particular measure, we can actually reduce this, which we've measured, and it's this, and so people can actually see those numbers coming down. And that will help you get grants, for one thing, because then you can apply and you can make really important arguments. But it also helps you to collaborate with everyone, and you can make arguments with your tent suppliers and your porta potty suppliers about you know, the reason we want this is not just to be annoying, to be a thorn in your side. We want it because we want to bring this CO2 measure down. To see it's here right now, and we want to bring it down. So that's why you need to measure.
Awesome. Makes so much sense. Thank you so much. And Zale?
In the short term, the design build that we've kind of loop we're in right now is like question how you lay out festivals. Like there's a whole bunch of default infrastructure that everybody assumes you have to have, and you have to have this way, and it has to look like this. We have kind of deconstructed all of that and have built our stages out of one of our stages, which we're kind of reproducing, is we call it our diversion architecture. So we're building things that we can then repurpose for other things, but we're also really truly leaning into the idea that the space we have and the crowds we have and when they peak and where the sun is, that's the way to plan a festival. And we've really redone, and I think it's going to be incredible. We didn't get to do it this year, but we are so excited about it. It was such a mind bend for us. We had built all of these things thinking we had to kind of do these purposeful things that were, a lot of it ended up being man-made structure we had to bring in. And now we're pulling it all back and saying, let's challenge ourselves to literally use just the land. And can we do it? And what does that look like? And it was an awesome journey. So that's like the short-term thing. I think everybody has some cool version of that they can do. Happy to share. And long-term, it's like, think of every week, think of the inspirational aspects of, as you kind of incorporate the kind of no single use and all of the things, we're also affecting people's lives. So not just us, but the artists that are coming to the festival are literally walking away with their favorite weekend of the year. So if you can imbibe them with the kind of things that you're trying to demonstrate, and think of yourself as producing content too, because you're influential. Every one of these festivals are really influential. And I think that is the kind of subversive part of how we can really impact the world, is like, it's a difficult journey to build effective content, but I think it's a really worthwhile way to magnify all the great things you guys are doing.
I love that. Very, very, very powerful. Yeah, you all have really, really powerful roles, I think, and influence. So I appreciate that you're going green. And finally, last but not least, McBride.
All right. I think a short-term easy goal that we're working on, I've mentioned before, the One Last Car program, is really, really trying to reduce the amount of driving. It's hard that we're out in a rural area, but increasing the number of shuttle buses and ways for public transport to increase, advocating with council to bring a rail line closer to the festival site so we can reduce the number of cars, and then on site and our own staff, and looking at ways our volunteers can get around the site by bikes. We're increasing the fleet of crew bikes that we have, community bikes. So just trying really hard to reduce the fossil fuel usage for the festival. And then a long-term goal, again, it goes back to energy, is going off grid. We did close the water loop, and we'd like to close the energy loop as well, and create some sort of renewable energy power plant either on site. We have a lot of space, so we could perhaps do wind turbines or solar panels, or we're also looking at some sort of app, a power sharing app, so that our community that a lot of people have solar energy already and feeding back into the grid, and that there could be a positive outcome for everyone, that they can share the power when they've got too much and other people can use it. And so we're talking with developers on that. We've got a citizens program group that is called the Renewable Energy Party, and they're working on this and developing business models as well, so that we can eventually stop using so much electricity from the grid and go off grid. So I think that's a huge one. It's a very long-term goal to build that, but I think it's possible still. We can overcome that challenge, and getting lots of interest from people about it too, and just using the technology to our advantage. So
Okay, that is the coolest friggin' thing I've ever heard of, an app where you can share overflow of solar power. What? Very, very cool. Everyone's shared such amazing, brilliant things. And whoa, as an artist, I can tell you the whole time you're talking, I was just like getting so excited. And I know like stimulated and aroused are words that you might not associate with music festivals, but that is how I'm feeling. I am like so ready. I think Tress is gonna come in now.
I'm here.
Hi.
Hi. So everybody, it's a trick. You see that live Q&A slide, but we do not have time today for live Q&A. However, I have saved your questions and I will share them with panelists in case they have answers after this webinar, and I will communicate with you directly on your questions. This has run longer than our usual panels, and I think it's because there's such a hunger for this topic and there's so much to unpack. So I am committing to Folk Alliance presenting something on climate and sustainability at our online event, Folk Unlocked, which is happening in February, to which you are all cordially invited. In the meantime, first and foremost, Alicia Brilla, amazing job moderating this maelstrom of ideas and wrangling it into a unnecessarily short format. Applause for you.
It felt like my first time on stage.
But not your last time moderating. Everyone, Alicia Brilla available for your moderating booking needs. FII offers these webinars free of charge, not only to our members, but also to the community and industry at large. And so I will remind you all that if you'd like to support this work, we'd appreciate any and all support you can offer. And you can do so by going to folk.org/donate. While you're on folk.org, you can check out our announcement about our upcoming conference. A giant thank you to all of our panelists today: Marie Zimmerman, Zale Schoenborn, I think I got that right, Karen McBride, Amali Knobloch, and Candice Tosiarem. Wow, what a group. Alicia, amazing job. This webinar will be available for you to watch again or for you to invite pals to come and watch it, along with a transcript on the Folk Alliance YouTube channel in the coming days. Stay safe and connected and in community with each other, everyone. We could do it. We could do it.
Thank you, everyone. This was so inspiring. I'm friggin' so inspired. I'm gonna go write an album.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.